Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to this seminar on behalf of the OUVEMA and Pedestrian Mobility Switzerland. My name is Patrick Rérat. I'm a professor of Geography of Mobilities at the University of Lausanne, and I'm the co-director of the OUVEMA with my colleague Bengt Kayser. For those who don't know us, OUVEMA is the University Observatory for Cycling and Active Mobilities, and it's an interdisciplinary research platform at the University of Lausanne. And this semester, we are organizing a seminar series on public spaces on the move. And we'll have 4 presentations this semester. You may have seen the program. Today, we'll hear more about Pontevedra. In 2 weeks, on March the 16th, James Toen from Gale Architect in Copenhagen will give a talk on how to make space for active mobilities and for public spaces. On April the 27th, we'll hear more about a project of public space in the city of Bienne. On June the 4th, we'll have 2 presentations on projects or research in Fribourg and Yverdon, 2 Swiss medium-sized cities. Visit our website if you want to know more about us and if you want to know more about the program and to get the Zoom links. We have the pleasure this semester to co-organize this seminar series with Mobilité piétonne Suisse, or Pedestrian Mobility Switzerland. And I will give the floor to Jenny Leuba, who's working for this association.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. So my name is Jenny, and I'm a geographer and project manager at Pedestrian Mobility Switzerland, or Mobilité piétonne Suisse. We are very pleased to be partner for this webinar series about walking and about you being so numerous today. Just a few words about our association. We are active as an NGO at the national level and working since 50 years already, especially about pedestrian network planning in Switzerland. And our goal, very shortly, is that walking should be safe and possible for everybody. And we do a lot of advising about for mobility professional, for instance, and we'll have a conference day on the 28th of June in Bern, for example, about temporary street design. So you can find more about that on our website, which is called mobilitépiétonne.ch. And we are very lucky to begin this webinar series with the star of walkability, the city of Pontevedra in the north of Spain, with about 80,000 inhabitants. You have had a strong political engagement since more than 20 years now, and that shows that it's possible to have a pedestrian city center and to have a happy and healthy population, a place where it's easier to go around with a wheelchair, for instance, to attract new inhabitants and have a very active local shops. Pontevedra received several awards for this reason. And a few years ago, I had the chance to have an interview with your mayor. And I remember that sentence of him, that he said, today, Pontevedra has a generation that grew up with the pedestrian city center and wouldn't give it up. And I also remember he said, yes, any city can be inspired from Pontevedra's experience and could follow this path. So we are really looking forward to knowing more about your story just in a minute. But before that, I give back the word to Professor Patrick Rérat. He will present you a little bit more and give some technical information as well.
Yes, we have the pleasure today to have 2 guest speakers, and I'm going to introduce them, but not with a very good Spanish accent, I'm afraid. So the first one is Daniel Macenlle Díaz. He has a degree in law at the National University of Distance Education. He's been a civil servant since 1981, when he entered the town council of Moania as a local policeman. He served as a chief of the local police in Pontevedra from 2005 to 2020, and currently he holds the position of general director of the Citizen Protection Area. and he has actively participated in the urban transformation of Pontevedra. Our second guest speaker is Demetrio Gómez Xunqueira. He graduated in Hispanic Philology at the University of Santiago de Compostela. He works as a secondary school teacher, and he's a member of the Bloque Nacionalista Gallego, a political party for which he was elected in Pontevedra for several periods. And he's currently the delegate councillor for urbanization, reurbanization works, mobility, public transport, and parkings. So I would like to thank them for having accepted our invitation. And just a few housekeeping words before starting. Please mute your microphone, switch off the camera to save broadband. And please feel free to use the chat to share your thoughts, to ask questions. We'll have time after the presentation for a discussion. So thanks to our two guest speakers, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. At the beginning, we want to apologize for this delay because of technical problems. These things used to happen when you more need to be prepared. Well, we want to thank the organizers for having chosen the experience of Pontevedra as part of this session. It has been a great satisfaction for us to be here and share these minutes with you. Well, I'm going to read the main ideas about every picture in order to be the most as rigorous as I can, and to gain some time for the posterior debate. Okay. Well, this presentation we are talking about the context where we are. We are looking back to the city we had in 1999 before the restoration process started. We will tell you what city we wanted, the objectives we had in mind, and the measures we've been undertaking in order to achieve these objectives. And finally, we'll talk about the results of our urban our transformation process. Well, to start off, I will put Pontevedra in context. Pontevedra is located in the so-called Atlantic axis of the Iberian Peninsula, from A Coruña to Porto, at the bottom of the Pontevedra estuary. Here you can see the Pontevedra estuary. This is a photo where the city is located, just in the place where the river and the sea get together. Pontevedra serves as capital of the province of the same name, a province of 980,000 inhabitants. In addition to that, it is the center of a 250,000 people district. As regards the council of Pontevedra, it is 190,000 square kilometers in surface and has 85,000 inhabitants. The city of Pontevedra is located in this context, where citizens have access to all kinds of services. In the city core, 62,000 people live in barely 5.5 square kilometers. The city is well communicated by bus and train, and serves and several airports are found at a relatively short distance. But what was Pontevedra like before 1999. Regarding motorized traffic, there were more than 100,000 displacements within the city limits. The streets were 14 meters wide in the best of cases, with an average daily intensity in excess of 50,000 vehicles in each direction. Trucks could go through the city center everywhere. And 5.5 square kilometers and 50,000 people with that kind of traffic was unbearable. Noise, inconvenience, pollution, and danger were ever present. Now, regarding pedestrian mobility, no one cared about pedestrians at all. Cycling was discouraged. There were dangers everywhere. Wheelchairs were forced to take the risk of using the road. And the city was badly lit and disorganized. In such a place, the weaker are completely expelled from public space. Most of it is devoted to cars. And that is not what we want. What city did we want? We wanted a kind, comfortable, and safe city where urban quality of life is high. A city that is accessible, a city that's not non-polluted with fumes or gases, a city that is egalitarian and cohesive, a city that makes people more autonomous, especially in the case of children, disabled, or elderly. We assume that urban mobility, management, mobility citywide, and all kinds of mobility were in need of a swift action on our part. The traditional priority scale was turned upside down. From the car, public transport, pedestrian, cyclist model, we went to pedestrian, cyclist, public transport, car one. Preeminence, privilege, and primacy were given to pedestrians. The same went for cyclists. The picture you are watching shows the normal scale of priorities in a lot of cities all over Europe. The space is devoted to cars, and they have the preeminence, and then public transport, and in the last step goes the weakest. We wanted to turn it and to change the situation and give the preference to the weakest. And this is nowadays how it works in Pontevedra. The first, the preeminence, the privilege on public space is for disabled, pedestrians, children, elderly, and then go the others. We have never seen this as an incomplete pedestrianization, dealing only with the historic center. Our intention was not to practice placemaking. Our approach was global, applied citywide, and focused on mobility management. The priority scale was inverted, and the mobility management was the key of this restoration. I will now describe very briefly a number of measures that we have been planning and undertaking gradually during this 23-year-long process in the city of Pontevedra. As I said, I will limit myself to the most general ones. An in-depth analysis of the details could make whole books. 23 years can hardly be summed up in 30 minutes. Well, our policy is founded on 4 important principles: road safety, accessibility, universal accessibility, pedestrian preference, and as a consequence of it, a dramatic motor traffic reduction. Regarding road safety, the city needs to be safe with a very low road accident rate. Also, people need to feel that it's really safe. That was our objective in this field. The measures we've been undertaking in order to achieve it were a 30 km/h speed limit is introduced citywide. In addition, some areas are limited to 10 or 6 km/h, depending on the pedestrian mobility demand. Structural measures are taken by means of, for instance, road humps. These force drivers to respect speed limits anywhere in the city. We want to create a calming traffic scenario where speeding don't depends on the will of the driver. Speeding depends on the measures we have taken on the public space. If you speed over these humps, you will break your car. Then it doesn't, the fact of speeding or not don't depend on you, depend of the features of the street. The second aspect we kept in mind was the accessibility. The city needs to be comfortable for everyone and accessible for those who have difficulties to move, see, or hear. That is our objective in this field. The measures we've been taking were a complete suppression of mobility barriers citywide, widening of sidewalks and leveling of streets, introduction of a high-quality energy-efficient lighting, and skilled design of public space, reducing obstacles to a minimum. The third aspect was the pedestrian preference. Space for pedestrians and cyclists in public roads was increased. As a consequence, space for cars and parking was diminished in the same proportion. Pedestrian preference measures were enforced. Each road was classified depending on its specific features and pedestrian mobility demand. The following categories emerged: absolute pedestrian preference areas, coexistence streets, and segregated mobility streets, where a minimum of 50% space is devoted to pedestrian use. Here in this picture, we can see two different conceptions of public space. The traditional conception of giving all the space, all the public space to motor traffic is the first one, and the second one is the same space, but in this time thought for pedestrian use and for leaving people on the street. Right. No.
Sí. Sorry.
Right. Those are the three categories we have, the three types of streets we have in the city. Absolute preference, pedestrian preference, cars are not allowed to enter. We are talking gardens, beaches, parks, and things like that. Coexistence areas are those areas where people, where pedestrians have absolute preference, and they can get together with motor traffic, but at very slow speed and in a very reduced number. And segregated streets are the traditional streets we can find anywhere. This is an example of coexistence area. This is our historic center. Coexistence spaces have a speed limit of 6 kilometers per hour. Segregated spaces have a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour citywide and show wide sidewalks against narrow lanes. Specific arrangements were made for mobility optimization in areas with the most transit. We have several special plans, a plan for historic center, a plan for university campus, another for estuary river, another plan for footpaths. 40 kilometers of footpaths were made in the last years. A plan for school centers, plan for health centers, plan for the stations, train station and bus station. All of these plans are founded in the necessity of encourage people to walk and cycling against the use of motor traffic. We want to promote the motor traffic reduction and at the same time increase the alternative and sustainable mobility. In order to encourage people to walk, we have published and disseminate this Metro Minuto, we call it. This is a map like another one you can find in a tube station, but here shows the distance and the time you spend walking from one point to another. When people watch it, they realize that the distance may be walked in in less time than that they thought. The fourth aspect we kept in mind was to get a dramatic reduction in the city traffic. Reducing the number of vehicles to figures compatible with urban quality, paving the way to less distress, increasing safety and pollutant reductions was our objective. The measures we've been undertaking were introduction of the concept of necessity. Parking is only allowed up to certain limits, as long as there is a justified reason not to leave the car at home. Suppression of chaotic parking. A time limit and a space restriction were urgently necessary. It has now been substituted by underground parking and the use of free car parks outside the city center. Here you can see one of these free car parks. You can leave the car in this park. It's free and it's unlimited in time. We have built around 10 border parkings like this around the city, and they are between 50 minutes walking distance from the center, and 7 minutes walking distance. So it's profitable for us and for the users to leave the car in these parkings and walk to the city center. Creation of a network of circulatory paths. The city is no longer an extension of the motorway. Constant monitoring of dynamic adjustments. Parasitic traffic is gradually eliminated. Ban of claxons within the city limits. Well, I've summed up the objectives and the measures we've been taking in order to get the best results we could. Now I'm going to talk about the results. People feel nowadays that their city is safe. While the province of Pontevedra has one of the highest accident rates in the entire country, the city of Pontevedra has managed to reach the top in terms of road safety. Wheelchairs can move around freely and independently, and children can go to school on their own. More than half of the space devoted to cars before 1999 has now been transformed into areas of pedestrian preference. Car use is heavily restricted in the city center. More than 80% displacements within the city are on foot or by bicycle. Road traffic has decreased, and so have fuel consumption and pollutant emissions. They have gone down by 2/3. Air quality is good for 65 days every year. Walking for about an hour per day, as doctors recommend, is completely integrated in the city mobility measure. Here you can see the evolution of traffic fatalities between 1997 and 2022. We have, there you can see more than 13 years from 2007 until 2022 without traffic fatalities, while in the previous year, every year we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 9 traffic fatalities in the same area. 73% school children over 7 go to school on foot. Urban noise levels are very low, and that's a question, that's a thing where people who visit us pay attention, and they pay attention on the fact that you can hear the silence. Well, this is Pontevedra, the city we've been transforming since 1999. I believe it very much looks like what we had in mind, but there is still much to be accomplished. There are more measures to be undertaken. The situation is always dynamic. You need to be permanently aware of what is required, what needs to be adapted to a new set of necessities. You either go backwards or you progress. You never remain static. Our intention is to keep on moving forward. We will never lose our motivation and remain active in what we do. Mobility management, however, is not a mere collateral ailment. Far from it, mobility management was the key of our urban transformation. The new walking culture alone is transparently clear. If we place pedestrians at the center of our policies and give them priority, is not incompatible with the use of other means of transport for longer trips. Without a thorough reorganization of the city mobility, Pontevedra could never have seen children going to school on foot. It would have been unimaginable to discover that it was really possible for more than 80% of city dwellers to move around walking. The same goes for road safety figures, noise suppression, discomfort, and traffic pollution. A report to do with what cities are like claimed that Pontevedra sounded not like car klaxons, but like bird tweets and human voices, especially those of children playing outside. We want the city must be for children can play on the road. For me, for us, a motorway surrounded by tall buildings and frightened pedestrians is the completely opposite of what we advocate. It is inconceivable to be forced to live in such a place. Then that can be overcome with the appropriate mobility management. It's a vicious circle. Disorganized cities become unsuitable for habitation. Suburbanization follows, leading to an increased demand for mobility and further problems for the city. It's a high time we put a stop to this. Pontevedra has had a remarkable influence on its surroundings. People enjoy themselves in public spaces, which were meant for their use. The negative effects of traffic are suppressed, dangers disappear, and the advantages of such a remodeling quickly become noticeable. In Pontevedra, our attempt has been highly successful so far. We learned and are still learning from our experience. If our case can be useful for other cities, it would be a great satisfaction for us. Okay, that's all, and we are at your disposal for any question you want to ask.
Thank you very much. It was great to learn so much about the experience of Pontevedra, and I think that we have already quite a few questions.